Hey guys, and thanks for stopping on by for today's video where I'm just going to be looking at one poll, this one coming out from Monmouth, and it's the first numbers that we've gotten from a Monmouth poll for that 2020 Democratic primary picture since back in June. We're actually seeing quite a bit of shifting in the numbers now since that prior poll. We've had a couple of debates that have changed things up, and the biggest difference between that prior poll and what we're seeing now is the 13-point drop of Joe Biden falling back into third place with 19% support. In the prior Monmouth poll, he was at 32%, maxing out at 33% of support back in May when he had an 18-point lead over Sanders. He also had a 17-point lead over Elizabeth Warren in the June poll, and now in this one, he drops back to third place at just 19% support. And this is a trend that we have been seeing where the more we're out on the campaign trail, the more that people are exposed to these candidates and what they have to say, their policy positions, also what they have to bring to the debate stage. It seems like, in general, the more people are witnessing Joe Biden in the public sphere, he seems to be backsliding with his numbers. And we actually, recent weeks, we've seen that Joe Biden's team is actually trying to limit his public appearances to some extent, which isn't the greatest sign if you're going to be running a really healthy campaign that goes on and wins the nomination. So obviously not great signs here from Joe Biden, but still a very competitive race, a three-way race here between Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Joe Biden. So Sanders here at 20% support, up 6 points from where he was in the prior poll in June, and then also Warren gaining 5 points up to 20% support. And she has seen consistent growth. Go back to April, she was at 6%. Then in May at 10%, June at 15%, August at 20%. We're seeming to go up almost about 5 percentage points in every single Monmouth poll that we've been getting, which is a really positive sign for Elizabeth Warren. But just some really interesting numbers. So now going and taking a look at some other numbers from this poll, we take a look at early states, and Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden are each at 20% support, and Sanders there at 16% in third place, just amongst those early states. But then we go to all other states, and Bernie Sanders has the lead with 23% support, and then you have Elizabeth Warren at 20 and Joe Biden at 17. Now, the early states are obviously extremely important in terms of building momentum for your candidacy. And it's just kind of interesting with Elizabeth Warren in particular, where she's pretty much right at the same number with those early states as she is nationally, while Bernie Sanders, at least in this result, a little bit lower, which is somewhat surprising to me anyways, because I would figure that Sanders should do pretty well in states like Iowa and New Hampshire, for instance, that are the first two states. Maybe not doing quite as well in South Carolina. That might be a big reason why his numbers are a bit lower. Obviously, Sanders really struggled in South Carolina back in 2016 in his head-to-head matchup against Hillary Clinton. But that is something to keep in mind. And then you have Joe Biden losing 6 points of support in those early states from where he was back in June. And then all other states, he was at 38% support, 21 points lower here at just 17% in all those other states. Now, it is important to keep in mind that these Monmouth University polls don't have the largest sample size. They're generally around 300 or so. So that is something to keep in mind, that when you have, especially for a national poll, a relatively lower number of people responding, you can get some fluctuations in the results. But again, like I said, we have been seeing this general slide from Joe Biden ever since we've been going through these debates. He has been slipping a bit in the polls while some of these other candidates have been picking up the slack. But then we go down and again, taking a look at those combined numbers, we have in fourth place Kamala Harris at 8%, Cory Booker and Pete Buttigieg each at 4%, Andrew Yang at 3%, a really nice poll from him. Creeping up there inch by inch. He was at 1% or less than 1% way back in April, and gaining around 1 percentage point in each poll since then. Julian Castro, Beto O'Rourke, and Marianne Williamson each at 2% of support, and then everyone else is at 1 percentage point or less. And then also just to take a look at a couple more interesting numbers from this poll. And if you're interested in looking at all the data for yourself from this Monmouth poll, I'll have it linked down in the video description. But we see Joe Biden, where his favorability back before he made his announcement in January of 2019, 80% favorable to 9% unfavorable. We see where he is now when he's been on the campaign trail in those debates, answering interviews, questions, and we see that he has taken a slide back quite a bit in those approval and favorability numbers, in particular here with 66% at being favorable for Joe Biden, and then 25% unfavorable. Quite a backslide there from Biden. And then just one other piece of data that I wanted to touch on, which is a really positive sign specifically for Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. So they asked these Democratic primary voters, how important is it to you that Democrats, or the one that you nominate, is someone who supports Medicare for all? 58% said very important. 23% said somewhat important. You add those up, that means 81% of people think it is important that the candidate supports Medicare for all. 9% unsure, 10% say it's not important. So a positive 71% to the important side as opposed to not being important. And that's really going to help candidates specifically like a Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, who jumped up in this month's Monmouth poll. And then you have Joe Biden, somebody who doesn't support Medicare for all, taking a hit, and maybe that is one of the reasons why. So that's going to wrap this video up, guys. Thanks for stopping by. Consider subscribing for more of this poll analysis content, and I hope to see you guys back here for my next video.